Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Abdullah Badawi with student number 230 and 114. And here I am will be explaining about my proposal with the title The Correlation Between Input Enhancement Strategies and Students Reading and Writing Achievement of 11th grade students senior high school in Palembang. So without further ado, let us begin. Let us start with the background of the study. English is very important in education because many academic resources and international communication use English. However, many Indonesian students still face difficulties in reading and writing skills. According to Hidayati 2018, students have limited exposure to English outside the classroom, which affects their reading ability. Nanda and Azmi 2020 also found that students often struggle with vocabulary and reading comprehension. In writing, students experience difficulties in organizing ideas, choosing appropriate vocabulary, and constructing sentences clearly. Mr. Zuhairi and Panindungan 2014 also explained that these problems commonly occur among Indonesian students. In addition, reading and writing are closely related skills because students who read more tend to write better, as started by Grape and Zhang 2016. To address these problems, this study focuses on input enhancement according to Sharwood Smith 1993. Input enhancements helps learners notice important language features in text. Like Smith 1990 also stated that noticing is necessary for language acquisition, and therefore this research investigates the correlation between input enhancements and students' reading and writing achievement in Indonesian EFL classrooms. Next, in this study, there are two research questions. The first question is whether there is a significant correlation between input enhancement strategies and students' reading and writing achievement among 11th grade students. This question aims to identify the relationship between the use of input enhancement and students' language performance. The second question is which aspect of reading and writing achievement is the most dominant in relation to input enhancement strategies. Through this question, the researcher wants to find out whether input enhancement is more related to reading comprehension or writing performance among the students. Next one is theoretically, this study is expected to contribute to English language education, especially in understanding the relationship between input enhancement strategies and students' reading and writing achievement. This study also supports the theories proposed by Michael Sharwood Smith, Stephen Krashen, and Richard Smith regarding input enhancement and noticing in language learning. Practically, this study is expected to help students improve their reading comprehension and writing performance. For teachers, the finding can provide insight into applying input enhancement strategies such as highlighting or underlining important language features in text addition, and this study can serve as a useful reference for future researchers who want to investigate input enhancement and language learning outcomes. The next one is this study uses a correlational research designed to investigate the relationship between variables according to John W. Creswell and J. David Creswell. Correlational design is used to identify the association between two or more variables using statistical analysis. In this study, input enhancement is the independent variable represented by X. Meanwhile, reading and writing achievement are dependent variables represented by Y. Therefore, this study aimed to find out whether there is a significant correlation between input enhancement and students' reading and writing achievement. Language. First, studies by Ryan M. Labrosi and Sang Keely found that input enhancement improves students' reading comprehension and helps learners notice linguistic forms. Second, studies by Sang Keely and Su Ting Huang showed that input enhancement also improves grammar learning and language production. Third, Li Junmeng and Yin reported that input enhancement positively affects students' writing performance. However, there are still several research gaps. Most previous studies only focus on single language skills, such as reading or grammar separately. In addition, many studies only examine short-term experimental effects. Furthermore, limited studies investigate the relationship between input enhancement and both reading and writing achievements simultaneously in Indonesian EFL context. Therefore, the study aims to fill this gap. In this study, there are four hypotheses. The next one is, in this study, there are four hypotheses. First, there is a significant correlation between input enhancement and students' reading achievement. Second, there is a significant correlation between input enhancements and students' writing achievement. The third one, input enhancements positively support students' reading and writing achievement. And finally, reading achievement is predicted to be more dominant than writing achievement in relation to input enhancements. For the hypothesis testing criteria, this study uses a significance level of 0.05. If the p-value is greater than 0.05, then no hypothesis or HO is accepted, and the alternative hypothesis or H1 is rejected. And however, if the p-value is less than 0.10, is rejected, and H1 is accepted. This means there is a significant correlation between the variables. And the next one is the population and sample of this study. It consists of 11 grade students from MAN 3 Palembang, SMAN 9 Palembang, and last one SMAN 11 Palembang. The total sample is 120 students. This study uses a sampling technique by collecting data from all selected 11 grade students in those schools. The participants were chosen to represent senior high school students in the Indonesian EFL context. Therefore, the data collected from these students are expected to provide reliable information about the relationship between input enhancements and students' reading and writing achievement. And the next one is, in this study, there are three research instruments used to collect the data. The first instrument is an input enhancement questionnaire consisting of 30 items using a 5-point Likert scale. This questionnaire is used to measure students' perceptions and experiences related to input enhancement strategies. And the second instrument is a reading test in the form of multiple choice questions. The test is developed by researcher based on 11 grades English materials to measure students' reading achievement. And the third one is instrument is a writing test in the form of a paragraph writing assignment. This test also developed by a researcher and based on 11 grades English materials to evaluate students' writing achievement. Next, to measure validity, this study uses the Pearson product moment formula for the questionnaire. Meanwhile, content validity is used for both the reading test and writing test to ensure that the instruments are appropriate and relevant to the 11 grades English materials. And for reliability testing, this study uses Cronbach's alpha to measure the consistency of the instruments. A higher reliability score indicates that the instruments are reliable and consistent for collecting the data. Next is, in this study, there are two prerequisite tests before conducting correlation and regression analysis. And the first one is the normality test using Kolmogorov, Smirnov, and this test is used to determine whether the data are normally distributed or not. The second is the linearity test using one-way ANOVA, and this test is used to identify whether there is a linear relationship between the independent and dependent variables. And the purpose of this test is to ensure that all data are suitable and meet the assumption for correlation and regression analysis. And next, in conclusion, this study investigates the correlation between input enhancement strategies and students' reading and writing achievement among 11th grade students based on the theories proposed by Stephen Krashen, Michael Sherwood Smith, and Richard Smith. Input enhancements helps learner notice important language features and support language learning process. Previous studies also showed that input enhancements positively affects reading comprehension, grammar learning, and writing performance. This study uses a quantitative correlational design involving 120 students from MAN 3 Palembang, SMAN 9 Palembang, and SMAN 11 Palembang. The data are collected through questionnaires and reading tests and also the writing tests. Therefore, this study is expected to provide useful insights for students, teachers, and future researchers regarding the role of input enhancements in improving students' reading and writing achievement. I think that's all for today. Thank you for listening to me. I close it by Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye bye.